Hi, good afternoon, all of you. How are you all doing? Hi, hello, Ishita. Good afternoon. Hi, Driti. So, how's it going, guys? Classes, mein? Like, is it really hectic? Like, are you guys having a lot of tests, projects, and things? Mm. So, are you guys getting like a lot of assignments and things like that? Good afternoon, Miles. Okay, no test, but you have a lot of projects, Acha. Wait, let me start off by just unmuting all of you, yeah? Unmute, 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 unmute. Okay.
Tests, and then we have projects, assemblies, and then we are parts of clubs like the book club and the debate club and all that. So we have to
Ah,
work for that.
so basically, like school is just going in full swing as like a normal school would, except you have to do all of it, everything at home, online. So that's taking a bit of a toll, is it?
Yeah, I mean, no, Miss, look, I don't like studying on the screen. I like the screen. I'm not saying I don't like the screen, but I like watching movies and all that on the screen. I don't like studying on the screen. Studying has to be
That
off.
doesn't feel like.
It is
Mm, okay.
painful studying on screen. So boring.
Oh, hmm. Okay. But yeah, that's something that you need to get used to because of these circumstances. And printed books, by the way, you don't have to. Oh, Ishita is also saying a lot of eye ache. I know, I know. Like it affects me also. Like earlier, these glasses were only for screen time, and I used to be a little okay about it. But for the past 2 weeks, yeah, even I've been getting a lot of headache. That even if I'm looking at my mobile phone, even as you guys know, watch series or something, or just look at messages, I have to wear these glasses. So it is like, trust me,
My
completely
back
understand.
hurts. My back
Ah,
hurts.
yeah, that's another thing. Need to keep sitting. Posture and things are something you need to look at. Hmm. So, so yeah, we will try and figure out how to make this easier on you guys. Another thing, yeah, form has been circulated amongst you guys also. We will be sending out the printed books like as soon as yeah, we've heard that one of the printers are open, so we just have to like get them printed and sort out how we can get them reach you guys, organize courier and all of that. But yeah, hopefully that will be one thing that you don't have to look at material also on the screen. So when you're studying, so that should be of some help. Hmm.
Miss, why don't we do this on Zoom? Like, uh, because Lohit
Zoom.
sir said
Okay,
that,
so instead of using
yeah, because this uses a lot of
sure.
internet connection. Me and my sister are doing together, and she's like, "Yeah, your laptop is using so
She's
much
not
internet. How am
getting.
I doing yours?"
Okay. Noted. Like next class onwards, we'll conduct it on Zoom itself. Yeah.
Thank you.
To get easier with the mic and all of that also. Yeah. So next class I'll do it on Zoom. Cool. Okay. And were you guys able to solve problems that we had discussed last class? The ones I'd given over the weekend? Did you take a look at them?
No, I didn't do.
No? Okay.
No,
Any of you?
I was
Okay.
trying to figure
Sid
out the
has taken a
whole
look at it.
concept. I mean,
Okay.
I looked at the problems, but I didn't solve them.
Okay. Did they seem like something you could do it? Like, were they familiar? Did you,
Yes, yes,
did it strike you that, okay, this is the formula I have to use here?
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Can you send them
Okay.
up?
All right. That's great. Yeah. Yeah, Sid.
Yeah, thanks. Because I mean, I haven't completed the whole thing, but I've done about at least three-fourths of it. Uh, but I want to
Okay.
correct it.
Okay. Yeah, no, the reason I'm asking is like, do you have any doubts in that? We can discuss that before going forward. If you have no doubts, you were able to solve all of them and things like that, I can go forward. And said you mentioned you wanted to get it corrected, right?
Yeah.
One thing is, yeah, you can submit it on the link, or whichever problem that you are doubtful about. Okay, like you're unsure, you're not feeling confident, you can just click a picture and message me. I'll go over it and I can give you feedback. Okay.
It's not like I've not been
But
able to solve it, but I don't know if they're wrong or right. So accordingly,
Oh
I'll
yeah, answer key. Okay, so it would help if I just share the answer key.
I think y'all use different words over there. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm saying mark scheme. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, okay. Hmm. Marking scheme, I mean, they don't hold any marks, right? So I'll share the answers with you.
My bad,
Yeah.
my bad. Yeah,
Okay.
Sid,
Cool.
are you from IGCSE?
yeah, I'm from IT.
Yeah, that is why.
Yeah.
Uh, hmm. Cool. All right. So maybe by tomorrow morning, I'll be able to share the answer key because once I'm done with the class, then I have to put it together. Uh, and yeah, so we'll go forward with the chapter then. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
So where we left off last time, we had seen that there was some phenomenon like photoelectric effect, black body radiation, and line spectrum that was observed, which kind of was hinting at, you know, like energy behaving like particles. Okay. And all of these developments gave hints for Niels Bohr to develop a model for the atom. Because the last attempt to figure out what is the structure of atom was left at Rutherford, who just said that, oh yeah, there's a nucleus in the center and electrons are revolving around it. Now, as per classical physics that was known at that point of time, they were like, oh, high charge, if it is under acceleration, it has to radiate energy, right? Then how is the atom stable? So Niels Bohr had an answer to all of the questions that Rutherford could not answer. So apart from explaining the stability of hydrogen atom, Niels Bohr also gave specific, precise measurements. Where exactly is the electron? How far away? Like what is the radius of the atom? What is the energy? The kinetic energy, potential energy, these energy levels that we were talking about, n equal to 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. So what are the numerical values for these energy? Niels Bohr could give answers to all of them. So let's look at the postulates that Bohr had mentioned. Uh, One thing I want you guys to like just keep a note of is a lot of these postulates and hypotheses that you will come across now. Again, we are getting into quantum mechanics, like quantum chemistry here. So a lot of these things, it's not logically deduced from what you already know. It is more of, okay, these are the observations that we are finding. Okay, there's a line spectrum and the lines are, we are getting only at like certain wavelengths only. And these hypotheses are an attempt to explain that. So once any scientist, be it Bohr, Heisenberg, anybody who gives a particular statement, or if they once they give any, they give an explanation, as long as that explanation fits all the experimental results, then it is accepted. It's not like deductive. Okay, this is the experiment, we started off here, and from this what can we infer? It's more of, oh yeah, these are the observations. Okay, let me put this formula down, and if it fits all the criteria, yeah, it is accepted. It's like the theory of gravitation, something you had studied earlier, right? Like, yeah, so it fits with all our observation and all our experiments. That's this thing. Okay, one moment. Mayas, okay, got disconnected. Yeah, I've unmuted you, Mayas. All right. So what did Bohr postulate? And Bohr built upon the model of what Rutherford had given out. All right. So he said, like, he agreed with Rutherford that nucleus is at the center that consists of positive charges. So that's your protons and neutrons. And the electron is moving around the nucleus. He said it's moving in a circular path of fixed radius and energy. So this is where he had defined these parts that electrons are taking, or you can also call them orbits. He said that they're circular paths, they've got like a fixed radius, and they've got fixed energy. So that's why they're also called energy levels. So these paths are called orbits, stationary states, or allowed energy states. So energy levels, because each of these paths um, is associated with a certain energy level. And these orbits are arranged concentrically around the nucleus. This is like the classic, structure of atom that you come across in a lot of like pop culture and other things.
The orbits are called stationary states or allowed energy states, right?
Yes. So different
Okay.
names for the same thing. The orbits themselves are energy levels or stationary states. Yeah. Okay. Then, second point, he said, okay, now the energy of an electron in the orbit does not change with time. So electron is revolving in a certain orbit. The energy that is possessed by an electron in a particular orbit, it does not change with time. However, the electron will move from a lower stationary state to a higher stationary state when required amount of energy is absorbed by the electron, or energy is emitted when electron moves from higher to lower. Okay. So for this, I'm just gonna switch to the board. I'll draw it and I'll show you, because then it'll be easier. Okay, while this loads. So this ties in with, when we were doing line spectrum. So I'd shown you that there are different energy levels. We define them with the principal quantum numbers, n equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, and all of that, right? So this is what Bohr is saying. So let's say this is the nucleus, tiny point, and this is the first energy level. Now Bohr said that these energy levels are organized, like they are arranged in concentric circles around the nucleus. So this is the first energy level, and then you've got the second energy level, and then you've got the third energy level, and fourth energy level, and so on and so forth, right? Now, so an electron, if it's in the first energy level, so where n equal to 1, okay, it has a fixed energy, let's say E1. And as long as it is in the first energy level, or this particular orbit, it will always have the energy E1. But let's say I were to give it some amount of radiation. Okay, it absorbs some extra energy. So now, like if I give it E energy, such that E1 plus E is equal to E3, let's say. Now, since this electron has gotten E3 amount of energy, it will jump to the third energy level. So this is
So
n
I have
equal
a
to 3.
question. So if it moves to the third energy level, then the number of electrons in the first energy level will change, right? So the electron configuration will become.
Mm. Yeah, which is why this is not like a permanent thing. So as soon as, like there is absorption taking place, it will also give energy, it will emit that extra energy out to come back to the ground state.
Repeat.
So as long as you don't do anything, electron is always going to be in n equal to 1 because it already has E1 energy. Okay. So as long as you're not giving it any energy, this is the original state of the electron, where it possesses E1 amount of energy and it is in the first energy level. It's just going to revolve, like, just be in this particular energy level. But if you give it some amount of energy, when you're exciting it, so this is what is called excitation of electron, right? You're giving it energy, so it temporarily gets, E2 or E3, or depending on how much energy you give, it temporarily has more energy. But this particular energy level can take, electron possessing E1 energy can only be in the first energy level. If it has any extra energy, if it has E3 amount of energy, then that electron has to revolve in the third energy level. So basically
So as
each
in,
orbit,
can't the electron lose that energy, or transfer that energy somehow, rather than
yeah, that's
shifting?
exactly what is happening. So when you give it energy, it is temporarily gaining a larger amount of energy. So it goes to the third energy level, and then it releases that extra energy to jump back to its original E1, which is why you're getting the line spectra, right? And which is why you're getting, you have your neon lights and sodium vapor lamps and things like that.
Yeah, okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
So
the
there's like
amount of
excitation.
so the amount of energy absorbed is equal to the amount of energy released.
Uh, yeah, the amount of energy that that is absorbed, and if you compare the amount of energy that is absorbed and the amount of energy that is given out, the total energy should be equal. Now it's not necessary that electron has gained so it jumps to E3. It may so happen that it has gained E amount of energy, jumps to E3, and then when it is jumping back, it may give out two different energy packets also, like jump to E2 and then jump back to E1. ये भी हो सकता है.
Yeah, whatever package it may be, the total energy that will be released will be the same as as much energy that was absorbed, right?
Yes, the overall will be equal because obviously energy is conserved.
So in a long period of time, it's eventually gonna jump back to its original state, right? So if it
Yes.
absorbs, so are you saying that every electron is at E1, or is every electron like placed in different energy shells and has a
Yes.
certain value assigned to it?
Yes. So electron
Means
has E1 energy. It's always in
what
first
if
energy level.
the electron is in E3, is in the stationary state 3, and
Mm.
from there, due to radiation or something, it loses energy. So does it come to E1, and then again after some time it regains the energy and goes back to E3?
Now that's a difficult question because the postulates, that were given by Bohr, he could only explain all of these phenomenon related to hydrogen atom, which has only like, one proton and one electron. So that's actually one of the drawbacks of Bohr's model, because he could explain the structure of the atom only of hydrogen atom. Like once you
Here
got
in the
to
textbook,
more
it's given
complicated.
the second postulate says that, however,
Hmm.
the electron will move from a lower stationary state to a higher stationary state when required
Yeah.
amount of energy is absorbed by the electron, or energy is emitted when electron moves from a higher stationary state to a lower stationary state. The energy change does
Yeah.
not take place in a continuous manner. So it also takes place from higher to lower, but then you're saying that it
So
won't take
that's
place
your
in all atoms,
so,
or
so it's not one way. So what it says is when an electron absorbs energy, it can get excited and it can get de-excited. So again,
okay.
like these are postulates relating to hydrogen atom. And hydrogen atom only has like only one electron, which is in the first energy level. So its stationary state is the first energy level. So iske baad it cannot go any lower than the first energy level, right? It can only jump to a higher energy level. Now that will take place only when it absorbs energy, and it can emit energy, like once it's higher, once it's excited, it can be de-excited, like it can jump to a lower energy state by emitting energy. So it can only jump back to a lower energy level once it is excited to a higher energy level. And that is what is giving rise to the line spectrum that you observe for different what do you say, different elements. So you can
Yes,
see
but
here.
that will only, Miss, what you said right now, that is an explanation for when it moves from a lower stationary state to a higher stationary state. But what
Yeah,
in case of moving from higher stationary state to lower stationary state?
then it releases that energy. Then it
Meaning,
releases energy. It
so when
releases.
it's in
So
the
there is
higher
emission.
state, it releases the energy, so it goes to the lower stationary state, and then again it may
Yeah.
get excited somehow, and then it again goes to the higher stationary state.
Yes.
Okay.
So a particular state is associated with a particular energy value. Matlab electron should have that much amount of energy to be able to revolve in a particular energy state. Now if it has more energy, then it will go to the designated energy level that can match the amount of energy that it has. So that's what this whole concept revolves around. So if an electron wants to go to a higher energy level, it needs to absorb energy and then it goes to a higher energy level. And if an electron emits that much amount of energy, then it falls to a lower energy state.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And this energy change does not take place in a continuous manner. So what is happening is energy packets are released, like again the quantization of energy that Planck had proposed is coming into picture here. So it's not like a continuous range of radiation is released. It is releasing an energy packet of 400 nanometers or 700 nanometers or whatever that particular value it may be. So it is quantized. The third postulate is one moment, like we have questions here. Ishita is saying, ma'am, here the electron gains energy from where? Acha. So during for excitation, it can gain energy by when you heat up that particular gas tube or when you expose, when you electrolyze it. So heat, electricity, exposing it to UV light. So all of these are sources of energy, but it's all mainly radiation energy. Okay. Next, the frequency of radiation absorbed or emitted when the transition occurs between two stationary states that differ in energy E is given by nu, the frequency equal to delta E by h. So again, this is pretty straightforward. Like you guys have done problems on this earlier also. This is how we could figure out the frequency of the line that was appearing when electron jumps from fifth energy level to second energy level, or all of that. So again, Planck's expression, energy equal to h nu. So if you want to find out how much energy is absorbed or emitted, depending on whether it's jumping from lower to higher or higher to lower, that energy, if that energy is delta E, then you can find out its frequency by just equating it to h nu and then rearranging it. So delta E is the difference in energy. So that is written as E2 minus E1, where E1 and E2 are energies of the lower and higher allowed energy states respectively. Okay. So if it is jumping from, if the lower energy state is E1, higher energy state is E2, then of course it needs to be higher minus lower. And depending on whether it's jumping from lower to higher or higher to lower, that will give you the information of whether energy is absorbed or released, because obviously frequency can't be negative. Okay.
So if it's
Right.
from if it's E2 minus E1, that means energy is absorbed.
E2 minus E1. Matlab, again, E2 is a higher energy state and E1 is a lower energy state.
Yeah.
Now, difference between the two energy states is always going to be E2 minus E1, right? Difference, matlab subtraction.
No, that is not what I'm saying. You just said that it can't be negative. So, agar
Yeah,
mera E1 is a bigger quantity, I mean, bigger value than E2, then we'll do E1 minus E2, right? Then that will tell us
yeah.
if we, so E1 minus E2 will be energy released or energy absorbed.
One moment. See, E1, E2 are not initial final. Here they're defined as lower allowed energy state and higher allowed energy state. So coming back to this diagram I had drawn. So each one, they're calling it E1, E2, E3, E4 and so on. So E1 is the lowest, उससे बड़ा है E2, उससे बड़ा है E3, उससे बड़ा है E4. Now, if an electron is jumping from E3 to E1, okay, if it's jumping from E3 to E1, the frequency, now because it is jumping from higher to lower, it is releasing, emitting energy. Because it is jumping from higher to lower, this means that there is emission taking place. क्योंकि कम हो रहा है electron का energy. And how much energy is emitted, you can find out by subtracting both of them. But if it is going, let's say, from E1 to E2, now lower से higher जा रहा है ना, that means that if it is electron is increasing its energy level, it means it's absorbing energy from somewhere. So if it is going from lower to higher, it is absorption. Again, the delta E, like how much is it absorbing, the difference, you get it by subtracting E2 minus E1 only. So delta E, when you're subtracting the energy values, it is always the higher energy minus lower energy. So it's always you subtract the lower from the higher to get the difference. But when you're trying to figure out, the wording used, whether it's absorbed or emitted, will tell you whether electron is going from lower to higher or higher to lower. Okay. Another way to look at it, as Ishita mentioned, is you basically take the mod value if you want to take it as initial final. Yeah. Okay. Next, the angular momentum of an electron is quantized. Now, this is an important point. Do you know what is meant by angular momentum? Have you come across this earlier when you're doing mechanics and physics? No?
Yeah.
Okay. So some of you have come across, some of you have not. Dhriti, yeah, can you tell us what do you mean by angular momentum?
It is the moment of inertia into omega. That is angular velocity.
That is the formula. That is absolutely correct.
I don't know the explanation. I don't know the explanation to it.
Okay.
I can read from the
Uh,
textbook if you want.
no, that's okay. I just wanted to know like how much you guys know of it or what you have understood of it, isliye.
We did that in
Uh,
dimension. We have not done it in detail anyway.
अच्छा. No, अभी
यूनिट
आएगा.
मेजर डायमेंशन ढूंढने के लिए किया
नहीं
था.
नहीं हाँ अभी पूरा 11th grade you are going to deal with mechanics, so बाद में आएगा when you get rotational motion. um okay, so you guys must be familiar with momentum, right? Momentum, mass into velocity. Like momentum will,
Yes.
it's a basically quantity. Like when something is moving, you would have used it also. Okay, like you've got a lot of momentum. matlab you've got a lot of, either mass or velocity or both. So angular momentum is basically same as momentum, except in the context when you're dealing with circular motion. Like when something is rotating, so when something is going in a straight line, that's straightforward mass into velocity. When something is revolving, going in a circular motion, then the mass into the angular velocity is equal to the angular momentum. If you know what is meant by momentum in a straight line motion, angular momentum is basically the same thing, similar thing when applied to circular motion ऐसे. ठीक है. So what Bohr is now यहाँ पे electron is revolving in circular orbits, right? Circular paths, right? So angular momentum of an electron, like because electron is revolving around the nucleus, so he's defining angular momentum of an electron is quantized, which means that in a given stationary state, like the angular momentum can only take values equal to n into h by 2 pi. Okay, so h by 2 pi is a constant. It can only be either 1h by 2 pi or 2h by 2 pi or 3h by 2 pi or 4h by 2 pi and so on and so forth. So this is the expression that you get related to it. So angular momentum ka formula itself is mvr, where m is mass of the rotating particle, v is the velocity with which it rotates, and r is the radius of circular orbit ka circular path. Okay. In this case, because we are applying it to the electron ka motion, so me represents the mass of the electron, v is the velocity of that electron, and r is the radius of the orbit in which the electron is moving. So mvr is equal to nh by 2 pi. So electron
The
can move
radius of
only.
the radius of the orbit is from the center of the nucleus, right?
Yeah, center of the nucleus to where the electron is. Yeah.
And Miss, what is n? You said
N is a
the
number.
number orbit,
Yeah.
which orbit it is, correct?
Yeah. N is just any number. Like n can take values of integer values only, or natural number values only. N can't be negative also. So it's either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So the significance of this particular expression mvr equal to nh by 2 pi is, now we are restricting. Now h is a constant, Planck's constant hai. 2 is a constant, it's a number. Pi is a constant, 3.14. Mass of electron is a constant. It's not like different electrons will have different masses. वो भी constant hai. So your velocity and radius are being restricted, or you can adjust the velocity and radius depending on the value of n. So remember how Bohr said that there's only certain allowed energy states possible. Now here he's mathematically giving where all these energy states are, and eventually he's also going to give the specific values of those particular allowed energy states also. Okay, so he said angular momentum is quantized, so mvr can only be equal to nh by 2 pi, where n can only take values of 1 2 3. Like you cannot have 1.5 h by 2 pi, like that just does not exist. That does not make an atom stable. Okay, so what he says is electron can move only in those orbits for which its angular momentum is integral multiple. So integral multiple मतलब whole number ही होना चाहिए, like 1 2 3 4, not fractions. Integral multiple of h by 2 pi. That means that angular momentum is quantized. It can only have specific values. Radiation is emitted or absorbed only when transition of electrons takes place from one quantized value of angular momentum to another. So he's just giving details for the energy levels that he described further. Now, how do you figure out where and what are these energy levels? You start off with quantization of angular momentum here. Okay, so we've got mvr equal to nh by 2 pi. So he's explaining, therefore, Maxwell's electromagnetic theory does not apply here. That's why only certain fixed orbits are allowed. So the problem, one of the problems with Rutherford's model was that when a charged particle is accelerated, its energy is radiated out, which means that it has to constantly lose energy. But Bohr is mentioning that there are certain fixed points uh, at certain fixed distances from the nucleus which satisfy that equation, that quantization of angular momentum mvr equal to nh by 2 pi, where this does not apply, which explains the stability of atom. Okay, so like there is a whole derivation of how Bohr had found out the value for the radius, this particular expression formula and numerical value for the radius, as well as the energy of the electron in a particular energy level. So derivation is not important. You're not going to get questions based on the derivation. You'll only get questions based on the final thing. One moment, like Ansh. Oh, Ansh has just joined in. Acha, acha, you just got over. All right. Ansh, it's been like half hour. We just started like Bohr's theory. Maybe you can watch the recording afterwards. Yeah, once I like this will be uploaded on YouTube by tonight once it finishes processing. Huh? Sid is asking, can you explain the last part again? Can you just tell me from which part, Sid?
From the formula, like the MEVR.
Okay, okay. All right. Let me write it down here. 1 minute. Page. Okay. So Bohr is mentioning, okay, so you've got the electron nucleus over here, and this takes only certain values, right? So Bohr is giving an explanation for at what radius do these particular energy levels occur. It's obviously it's not random. Otherwise, people would have found out about it like much earlier. There's not going to be any restriction. Classical, this thing can apply. But since that's not happening here, Bohr is giving an explanation for it. What he said is angular momentum is quantized. So last time when we saw that energy is being quantized, matlab you came across E equal to h nu, where nu is the frequency and it can only take these particular values. So in this case, an angular momentum is quantized. Bohr gave a formula, mvr is equal to n into h by 2 pi. So mvr is the formula for angular momentum. Like for a straight line motion, momentum is equal to mv, p equal to mv, right? When a particle is traveling in a straight line. But when it's traveling in a circular motion, The expression that Dhriti had mentioned earlier, moment of inertia into omega. So when once you put in the values for omega, which is the angular velocity and moment of inertia, you are going to get this value, mvr. So angular momentum is equal to mvr, where m is the mass of the particle, v is, at any given point what velocity is it traveling with, and r is the radius of the circular orbit in which it is traveling. So mvr is equal to nh by 2 pi. Me indicates that this is mass of the electron because we are talking about the electron over here. V is the velocity with which the electron is traveling, and r is the radius of the orbit. Now MVR can only take values of nh by 2 pi, where n is basically, integral values. So n can only be 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So MVR cannot be equal to 2 by 3 into h by 2 pi. This is just simply not possible. MEVR can only take values of either 1 into h by 2 pi or 2 into h by 2 pi or 3 into h by 2 pi and so on. So now h is a constant, pi is a constant, m is a constant. So automatically the values for v and r are restricted. So if I just rearrange it, the product Vr should be equal to n into h upon 2 pi into me, right? So you just can't take any random values of v and any random values of r, because when you multiply them, it should satisfy this particular equation. So that automatically restricts. R is, indicating the radius of the orbit, and v is indicating the velocity of the electron, that the velocity that electron is traveling with. So that is automatically restricting the values that r and v can be. It's not, like you can't have a random pathway beach mein, because that random pathway is not satisfying this particular equation. Angular momentum being quantized is restricting the certain distances at which the electron can exist from the nucleus. So it is restricting, okay, what all pathways can that electron take so that the atom is stable, so that it's not radiating energy, and so that it's not collapsing. Okay. Mayas. Once Ishita is asking, could you repeat the meaning of quantized? Meaning of quantized matlab, it is taking, so if you had to count, let's say, grains of rice, you can only take, okay, 1 grain of rice, 2 grains of rice, 3 grains of rice, 4 grains of rice, that way, right? But can you count number of water? Now water is like smooth. When you look at a lake or a glass of water or something, it's continuous, right? But when you look at apples, oranges, even grains of rice, they are distinct particles. So the things that you can count, like the things that you can find out the quantity of, is basically, grains of rice are quantized, because you can count the number of particles. You can find the quantity of rice particles or quantity of apples. वैसे. Okay. So quantized matlab, so that's why quantization of energy is you can count the energy packets. You've got 3 packets of energy that have a certain frequency, that have a certain wavelength. वैसे. Mayas, what is your doubt? You have been unmuted, huh? So you can speak, or you can like type it over here. Yes. Hello, Mayas.
Yes, ma'am, I want to ask here
Yeah.
H, pi, and mass of electron, all three are constant. Yes.
Yeah.
So do we have a specific value for them, or we have to find those value on our own when you're doing the question?
You won't be asked questions based on this particular formula. This is just for the derivation. Or end में ये सारे constant values लगा के there is like a particular value you get. So if
Achha, we
you
have
just
to just
remember
learn
that
that
one.
value and use that. Okay. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Sure. No problem. Cool. Okay. So there you've got like one restriction. Angular momentum is quantized, which is in turn restricting the particular pathways that electron can take. Right. Then another thing is, if you have an electron that is revolving over here, what are the different forces acting on the electron? You've got the nucleus here and electron is revolving. So what are the different forces acting on this particular electron? Can you guess?
Right now, I can only think of centripetal and centrifugal force.
Excellent. So centripetal, centrifugal are basically, reaction forces for each other in opposite directions, right? So
Means
centrifugal
centrifugal
force,
force
yeah,
imaginary, right? It's just like there, but not actually there.
yeah. So centrifugal is basically you feel it, इसलिए centrifugal force comes into picture, but that's basically the normal force, the reactionary. So it's like Newton's third law की वजह से, because you have a centripetal force acting inwards, उसका reactionary force is centrifugal force acting outwards. Okay. So you've got the centrifugal force acting outwards. Oh, इसको क्या हो गया? So bad. Huh. So you've got the centrifugal force acting outwards. And इसको balance करने के लिए, anyway, like, is there any other force acting on the electron?
Some force that is
Ishita's mentioning, yeah.
from the like attracting it towards the nucleus.
Yes.
I don't know what
Ishita's
electrostatic, I guess.
Yes. So you've got the attractive force from the nucleus. Nucleus positive charge hai, electron negative charge hai. So there is an attractive force acting inwards, acting in this direction. Okay. So you've got centrifugal force, which is mv square by r is equal to, now because electron is not going outward or inward, right? Like it is stably revolving in this particular orbit. So that means that both the forces are balancing each other out. So you've got mv square by r is equal to, you've got the electrostatic force. Expression for electrostatic force is, I think, something like 4 pi E naught pi nahi, Q square by R square. It's something like that. And either V is an unknown, R is an unknown, Q is basically charge of the electron, and E naught is basically the permeability. So this, you guys have not learned it yet. You don't have to know about this, but this is going to come in your grade 12 physics when you learn about electric charges and electric current and all of that. But a good hack is, like, this will help you a lot in your physics also, that whatever you learn in mechanics, like you have gravitational force, right? And you have an expression for gravitational force, g m1 m2 upon r square. Now the exact same, so when you learn about electrostatic force, the attractive or repulsive force between two charges, it is very, very similar to your gravitational force, the expression. So you have a constant, instead of m1 into m2, you have q1 into q2, but because charge of proton, charge of electron are equal, इसलिए आ गया q square upon g m1 m2 by r square. Like it's inversely proportional to the distance between the objects. So here also you've got your r square. Okay.
This I did not understand.
That's okay. We'll let it be. So this is basically the expression for your electrostatic force. And this is the expression for centrifugal force. Now, because both of them are balancing each other out, you equate both of them and substitute for the value of velocity, because that's one of the unknown values we have over here. We know the value of mass of electron. We don't know the radius. We don't know the velocity. We know this particular constant because it's a universal constant, just like gravitational constant. We know what is charge of an electron because that has been found out before, and radius is something that we do not know. So
we
the
don't know
place of
two things then, in
yeah
the entire equation. Then
yeah
why are
we
we
don't know two things over
equating it
here,
only for
but you have another equation here, right, relating v and r. So get the velocity value for velocity over here, n into h by 2 pi m into e into r idhar lao. Then substitute the value of v square in this particular expression, do a bit of mathematics, and you will get the expression for calculating the radius of the hydrogen atom. So the calculation for Bohr's this thing is Rn, where n is the energy level, is equal to n square h square by 4 pi square m e square. So this is the expression that you get for radius of the hydrogen.
Rn?
And
N is what?
n is the energy level. So ये वाला n is coming from the angular momentum being quantized. ये वाला n है.
Is that pi down? Is it 4 pi square or is it 4 r square?
Yeah,
4
this
pi.
is 4 pi
4
square.
pi square.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Either 4 pi नहीं, I think it's E naught into Q square. So n is the energy level, n equal to 1, 2, 3. These are the values that it can take. H is Planck's constant. 4 is 4. Pi is pi. M is mass of the electron, and E is charge of the electron. Okay.
So then the
Uh,
one is ME together and one E is different.
yes.
Is it
So
that
ME
is
is basically mass of the electron, yeah. And E is charge of the electron.
okay?
Yeah. Okay. Now in
Ma'am?
this, H is a constant. Yeah. One more.
Ma'am, what
4
was
is
E
a
naught?
constant. E naught is electric permeability का वो वाला constant. So that is an a part of the expression in the electrostatic force वैसे. Okay.
We write E square as
Mm,
Q.
yeah, E square you can write it as Q square. So the convention is that Q is used to denote charge of any particle, but because since we are dealing with electrons here, why not write E as charge of the electron? That's the difference in notation.
Okay.
Otherwise, yeah. So H is a constant, Planck's constant hai ye. 4 is a constant, pi is a constant, mass of electron always going to be the same, charge of electron is always going to be the same. So after substituting the values for all of these constants, you finally get Rn is equal to n square into, you get 52.9 picometers. Okay. So Mayas, yeah, I had mentioned, right? You don't have to like do the calculation every time. If you're asked to find the radius of a Bohr orbit of so and so hydrogen atom, you just have to use this particular value 52.9 picometers.
Miss, I have a question.
Yeah,
Rn is equal to 52.91 picometers.
52.9 picometers. And 91 this part of the box.
Sorry. So why have
Yeah,
you written n square 52.9 picometers?
n square into. So Rn है ना. So first orbit
हाँ.
find out करना है मतलब you'll put the value of n as 1. Second orbit find out
Okay.
करना है तो you put the value as 2, and third find
Okay.
out करना है तो you put the value as 3 ऐसे. It's all multiples of 52.9 ऐसे.
Got it. Thank
Ma'am,
you.
these all
Yeah.
formulas only work for hydrogen, only, and no other atoms.
So that's another thing. So what Bohr had done, now in this calculation, like obviously when he was equating centrifugal force with electrostatic force, you took into account electrostatic force, attractive force only from the nucleus, right? But when you have atoms with higher number of electrons, then there's also going to be repulsive forces of the electrons coming into picture. So Bohr did not take into account those particular repulsive forces, which means that this is applicable only for either hydrogen atom or any atom that contains one electron. Okay. So atoms that contain one electron are what? So one is hydrogen atom, which is pretty straightforward. And then you have hydrogen-like atoms. Okay. So hydrogen-like atoms are basically atoms that contain one electron. So what comes under this section is you've got helium plus. So helium originally contains 2 electrons, but if you take away 1 electron, 1 plus charge aaya to, that means it's lost 1 electron, so it has only 1 electron in its orbital. Lithium 2 plus. Again, lithium has 3 electrons, but it gained 2 plus ka charge, matlab it's got only 1 electron. So Bohr's expressions are applicable to hydrogen atom and hydrogen like atoms. So the main point being any atom that contains only 1 electron. So with hydrogen atom,
एक minute. Hydrogen,
huh,
no, hydrogen like atoms as in after the sharing or no, not sharing, loss or gain of electrons is done, then they have one atom. That way, hydrogen like.
one, yes. So basically, if you come across any species that has a total of 1 electron, that is basically a hydrogen-like atom. Yeah. Okay. So He plus, Li2 plus, Be3 plus. Obviously, these are not like, you won't get them practically because helium being a noble gas, you have to spend a lot of energy to get the electron out of its orbit. But theoretically, this is what it is applicable to. Okay. Now, one complication arises. So the expression that Bohr had given, Rn is equal to n square into 52.9 picometers, right? Now this is applicable to H atom. But when you take hydrogen-like atoms, there is like, even though it is similar to hydrogen that there is only 1 electron, nucleus obviously different hai. Hydrogen mein there's only a single positive charge in the nucleus, but helium mein there's 2 positive charges in the nucleus. There's 2 protons in helium's nucleus. So obviously the expression also will have to change, because helium may, if you've got 2 positive charge and you have 1 electron revolving around, obviously the force, the attractive force is going to change, right? Whatever balances out the centrifugal force. So isliye for hydrogen like atoms, the expression then changes to Rn equal to n square into 52.9 upon Z picometers. So this is for H like atoms, where Z is equal to the atomic number. Atomic number matlab indirectly you're just taking into consideration the total number of protons that it has.
And it will affect the answer significantly.
Yeah, Definitely. Radius तो definitely change होगा. Yeah. इसलिए ना. So like when you had studied initially about the periodic table, we just studied it theoretically कि okay, ions का radius is smaller than your actual atom का radius. Here you are numerically getting, how much smaller is it gonna get that way. Yeah. So these are like the important formulas that you need to learn. 52.9 value is like the value that mostly a lot of problems you'll be given, but even if not, it's like a simple number to remember. 52.9 picometers. Okay. And the kind of questions you'll be asked are like basically direct questions only. So you'll be just directly asked, okay, what's the radius um, of a hydrogen atom, or find the radius of the seventh energy level of the hydrogen atom. Tabhi you need to substitute n equal to 7. If it is an indirect questions that you'll be asked on this concept, it's gonna be like something like the fourth energy level of a hydrogen like atom was found to have a radius of so and so. So what element could it be? You know, like, or what is the atomic number of that particular hydrogen like atom? So in that case, you're given the fourth energy level, which means that n equal to 4. You're given the radius. You need to find z. Clear? So it's all going to revolve directly on this formula. You just need to interpret what is given and what you have to find out. That's all. Okay. So this is the expression for the radius. Similarly, Bohr had also given an expression for the energy levels itself. Similarly, by adding up the potential and kinetic energy. Like if the electron is revolving, you're going to have potential energy because of the electrostatic force of attraction, and you have the kinetic energy from its own velocity, right? So adding both of them up, this is the energy that Bohr had come up with. So energy of the electron, En, is equal to minus 2 pi square m e to the power 4. Again, m stands for mass of the electron. If you want, you can write this E, or if it's confusing, you don't have to write it. Just know that the M over here stands for mass of the electron upon n square h square. Yeah. Okay.
Is that minus 2 pi?
Yeah. Energy of the energy level is counted as minus. Yeah. So that's another important point that we will be discussing. Good catch, Sid. And this is like one of the questions in your NCERT textbook also, like why is the energy of an electron considered in a negative value? वो भी है.
So En is the energy of a certain orbit,
Energy level, yes.
energy level of a certain orbit.
Yeah. And again, similar to radius, once you substitute the value of all of these constants, you get this will be equal to minus RH into 1 by n square, where RH is equal to, again, it's similar to Rydberg's constant, except this is in terms of energy. So this will be equal to 2.18 into 10 to the power of minus 18 joules. And this fits in beautifully with the the expression given by Rydberg himself for the wavelengths and the line spectra also. Are you guys done noting this?
Yes, miss.
Yeah, okay. So each energy level ka expression is given by En equal to constant into 1 by n square, right? So if I were to find out a energy transition, let's say कुछ delta E find out करना है, wherein electron has gone from an initial value to final value. Delta is usually like final value minus initial value, the subtraction, right? So that is equal to EF is F is anything like E4, E5, E2, E1 कुछ भी हो सकता है. So that is equal to minus RH into 1 by n final square minus RH into 1 by n initial square, right? I'll take minus RH common into 1 by n final square minus 1 by n initial square, right? Or I can also write this as RH into 1 by n initial square minus 1 by n final square. So now, does this expression look similar to another expression that you guys had come across pehle?
Delta E by H.
No, that is giving you value for frequency. But this particular, the RHS bit of it, is it familiar? Anyone? I'll give you a hint. We had come across this particular
Line spectrum.
line
Yes,
spectra, Rydberg's
yes,
equation. Yeah. Yeah. So this particular value, if you use RH equal to 2.18, that gives you the value for energy. Similarly, you have the relation between energy and wavelength, right? So if you just substitute that, if you just say energy equal to hc by lambda, right? So if you substitute the value for hc and divide 2.18 into 10 power minus 18 divided by h into c, that is 6.16, and do this calculation, you should ideally get the wave number formula wala RH, that is 109677 centimeter inverse. Yeah. Check it out. It is true. Like I had done it, when initially when I was reading up about this chapter, when I was like making notes, it stands true. All of this comes into a full circle. It all fits, which is why Bohr's theory was very widely accepted and it was such a breakthrough, because it could explain all the phenomenon that people were observing with respect to atoms, the line spectrum, photoelectric effect, and all of that. Yeah. Okay, so it is 5 o'clock right now. We can do two things. One, either I can move on to the quantum mechanical model of the atom, or we can start doing numericals on this particular concept. What are you guys feeling like? Do you want to do
Numerical.
more of numericals? Okay. Everyone agrees? Sid is also saying numericals. Okay. Okay. All right, we'll do numericals, but I do want to get started a little bit on quantum mechanical model, because that's what you're doing in school also, right? You mentioned that you already taught about NLM and all of that.
Yes,
So did you
we have.
guys mm, did you guys do shape of orbitals and the SPDF and all of that in school?
We just started the chapter in school. Like literally today only we started it.
Okay, okay. ठीक है. Then okay. So were you guys taught the Schrodinger's equation?
What?
Schrodinger's equation.
No.
Okay, you guys have not heard of it, right? Okay, okay, no, not to worry. So from Schrodinger's equation, like solution to that equation is what you get the four quantum number values NLMS. Okay, but you guys didn't do shape of orbitals. Ishita says you did SPDF. Okay, okay, cool. So basically, they just taught you what was required to know about electronic configuration. That's it, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, ठीक है. Cool. Okay, then we are in no particular hurry. What about some basic concepts of chemistry then? Stoichiometry and concentration, वो भी थोड़ा practice
That,
करना पड़ेगा ना?
that chapter is over.
Yeah, I know. So we also will have to do it over here इसलिए.
But moles is simple.
Okay, cool. All right. So like I'm guessing we won't require so much time for it. Hmm. ठीक है. ठीक है. We'll do numericals on this right now then. Right. So according to Bohr's theory for hydrogen atom, this is what I had mentioned abhi. So stationary states are numbered as n equal to 1, 2, 3. So these are the different energy levels I had mentioned. So the integral numbers are called principal quantum numbers. Now, the radii of stationary states are expressed as Rn equal to n square into a naught. So a naught is basically just a variable given for this particular value, 52.9 picometers. So radius of first stationary state, you put n equal to 1. So that radius is just simply 52.9 picometers. Normally, electron in the hydrogen atom is found in that particular orbit. So obviously, as n increases, the value of r will increase. Matlab, radius is going to be bigger and bigger, and electron is going to be farther and farther away from the nucleus. Next, energy of stationary state of the electron is given by En equal to minus RH by 1 by n square. This also I have just written the expression where RH is Rydberg constant. In terms of energy, it is 2.18 into 10 to the power minus 18 joules. And if you want in terms of wave number, it is that wave number ka value 109677 centimeter inverse. So naturally, when you put n equal to 1, you get the energy of the lowest state, which is the ground state for hydrogen atom. That is 2.18 into 10 power minus 18 joules. Okay. Sid has mentioned this. Oh yeah, that's a good point. The energy of the electron is negative value. Okay. So the reason for this, do you think energy is a vector quantity or is it a scalar quantity?
Energy is a vector quantity.
Okay.
Scalar.
Everyone agrees? Is Dhriti correct?
No, it's a scalar quantity.
Okay. Ishita is also saying it's a vector quantity. Okay.
Yes, because energy, look at it this way, energy transformed is equal to work done, and work is force into displacement. Displacement we know is a vector quantity, so work has to be a vector quantity, and work and energy are almost the same. So that is why energy is also vector quantity. At least I remember it like that. I don't know if I'm right.
Did you guys do vector multiplication like physics के basics में?
Yeah.
Okay. So vector multiplication में there are two types of vector products, right? What are they?
Both have to be vectors in order to produce a vector. But if one is a scalar, you get a scalar value.
Dot and cross.
Yeah.
Myas. What is the difference between a dot product and a cross product? हाँ. Okay, Ishita has answered. What
Dot
about the rest
product,
of
the
you?
product is scalar, whereas the
Exactly.
cross product, the product is vector.
Yes. So Dhriti, like what you had mentioned about work done, yeah, dot is scalar and cross is vector, right? So what Dhriti had mentioned, so work done is definitely the product of force into displacement. Force is a vector quantity because it has a direction. Displacement is also a vector quantity because it has a direction. But the work done that you get is by the dot product of uh, force and displacement. Okay, so that is like a key point that you'd missed out on. So the work done that you get when you multiply force and displacement vectors is basically you're essentially finding out the dot product. So work done is a scalar quantity. And similarly, energy is also a scalar quantity. So the best way to figure out if something is a scalar quantity or a vector quantity is figure out if it depends on direction. Okay. So when you apply force on any object, okay, if I apply force in this direction, this is the effect that I'm getting, you know, like this is tilting towards my left and your right. But if I apply force from this direction, it is tilting in a different direction. Matlab, final effect, even though I'm applying the same magnitude quantity of force, then the final effect is depending upon the direction. When I change the direction, the effect of force is also changing. Matlab, the force has like the direction of force also plays an important value in you know, like determining the final effect or the final result of anything. So force is a vector quantity. uh, Ishita has mentioned she remembers corner of the page in 10th grade. Work is a scalar quantity and energy also as their dot products of force and displacement. Absolutely, yeah. But when it comes to temperature, will the temperature depend on the direction? Like if I measure temperature by keeping the thermometer upper ya niche, like can you figure out any direction for temperature? No, right? So temperature is a scalar quantity. Similar with mass. Like if you lie down and take your weight measurement, or when you stand up and take your weight measurement, is it going to differ? It's not gonna affect, right? So which means that mass is another scalar quantity. Now coming to energy, energy, it is established that energy is a scalar quantity because simple thing. So let's say I've got um, yeah, this car moving. What is the formula for kinetic energy?
Half mv square.
Half mv square, right? So abhi, if there is an object moving with a certain velocity v 5 meter per second और इसका weight भी mass भी fixed है 5 grams में, is the kinetic energy going to be different depending on whether this is moving left to right or right to left?
No.
It's not going to change, right? So energy is one of the quantities. So that's how you can figure out that energy is scalar because energy does not depend on the direction where it is moving. And mathematically, it is the dot product of the two vectors, which is why it's a scalar. Okay. So when energy is scalar, abhi, do negative values make sense for scalar quantities? Like, can you assign negative
No.
values to scalar quantities? No.
No.
Then why, yeah, then why is the energy of the electron E, the energy level here, why is there a negative sign over here? Why do we say energy in the ground state is minus 2.18 into 10 power 18 joules? Any idea? Any guesses? I just wanted to know if you guys like what direction you guys are thinking in. Isliye.
Miss, I don't.
No? Okay. So the energy, the value of energy in this context is taken relative to, whether you're adding energy or taking away energy. Okay. All right. So one moment. So Ishita is saying, can we say in this case it's a vector because it is releasing energy? No. So yeah, you're on the right track, Ishita, when you say it is releasing energy, but you can't call that a vector quantity. What is happening is energy of an electron in any particular orbital exists as a potential energy. So this potential is created because of the attraction between the proton and the revolving electron. So it is by the virtue of, apart from the kinetic motion, it's also because of the potential that is created between the positive and negative charge. Okay. When electron exists at infinite distance from the proton, when it is like far, far, far away, then what is the total value of energy that the electron has? Matlab, when the value of n is infinite, when it is at a infinite distance from the proton, from the nucleus, then what is the value of energy that that particular electron will have? Will it have any energy? Hmm?
Miss, I'm not understanding your question.
Okay, I'll just show it to you over here. That'll be easier. Okay, so we've got the proton over here, and you've got the different energy levels over here. If I take an electron and keep it over here, very far away, this is at like infinite distance. Infinite with respect to the atom. So, it can be like, even if it's like 50 centimeters away, it's gonna be at like infinity for this particular proton and electron. So what will be the value of energy for this electron at infinite distance when it is like really, really far away?
The energy will be the same.
Same as when it is over here.
Yeah.
But it won't be the same, no? We've just found out energy ka expression is RH into 1 by n square, na? So it is inversely proportional to n, right? So as n increases, the value of energy keeps on decreasing. So at the infinite distance, at like really, really far away, as n
The
is
energy will be
tending
very,
towards
very negligible.
energy
Like,
value will be
no energy.
practically zero. Yeah, no
Yeah.
energy, because there is no interaction at all between this proton and this electron. You've taken them far away enough that there is no interaction at all between proton and electron. So energy is zero. But okay, then as it comes closer, okay, when the electron is jumping from a higher energy to a lower energy, so when it is jumping from higher to lower, then is the energy increasing or decreasing? When it is going from higher end to a lower end, I will you say energy is increasing or decreasing? Like, does it have to absorb energy or emit energy when it is going from
Emit.
higher to lower? It has to
Emit.
emit, right? तो अभी 0 से if it starts emitting energy, किधर जा सकता है 0 से, और if it has to go lower than 0, then it goes into negative values. So which is why the energy levels, or the energy of the electron are assigned negative values. Another way to look at it is, if an electron is already existing, so let's say an electron is already existing at energy level 1, और इसके पास already E energy है यहाँ पे. Now in order to get it to n equal to infinity, in order to take it out of the electron, you have to give it energy. मतलब you are adding energy to the electron. So E already है, and you are adding E naught amount of, or E dash amount of energy in order to make the final total equal to 0 at n equal to infinity. अगर इधर से इधर तक लेके जाना है तो. In order to make the total equal to 0, because obviously energy is conserved, if you're adding energy, then it, like, to start with, it needs to have E equal to minus E dash amount of energy. तो
Well,
इसलिए
then that is
energy,
basic maths. I mean, it's just a mathematical concept. But according to our
exactly,
basic science, what we know that energy cannot be in negative.
yes.
So then
So absolutely,
this is just to prove the equation, like our that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It is always conserved. That is
yes,
how this is proved.
yes.
According to what we know of science, energy cannot be in negative.
No, energy should always have a certain value. So what this negative state indicates is basically, like, this is just an assigned value for the energy of an electron. So this is more of a scientific notation so that it fits in with our conventional calculations rather than a real physical significance. Yeah. So that is the note over here. Like, that is the reason for this negative sign. So by default, all the electron energy values are taken to be negative. Okay. So when the electron is far away from the nucleus, the energy T is taken as 0. And as the electron comes closer to the nucleus, that is, like, as the n decreases, it emits energy and the energy value is lowered. So 0 से और lower करने पे all the energy states turn into negative values. So this is more of a sign convention rather than having like a physical significance. Okay. Now that was the expression related to energy. And yeah, this was the last point. So Bohr's theory can be applied to hydrogen-like species. So what are hydrogen-like species? They're basically ions containing only one electron. So He plus, Li2 plus, B3 plus, all of that. So then it gets modified as, so radius gets divided by Z and energy gets multiplied by Z square. So this is how it gets modified. And once you have the value of r, then it is also possible to calculate the velocity of electrons moving in these orbits. How? Again, you have mvr equal to nh by 2 pi. So once you have the value of r, you can put it in that formula to get the value of v. So magnitude of velocity of electron increases with the increase of positive charge on the nucleus and decreases with the principal quantum number. Okay. And this is like how to get the expression for the line spectrum of hydrogen. And the couple of numericals, as I mentioned, there you go. So what are the frequency and wavelength of photon emitted during transition from n equal to 5 to n equal to 2 state of hydrogen atom? This you were able to do. Then coming to limitations of Bohr's model. Again, Bohr was able to give all of these details and postulates only for hydrogen atom or hydrogen like species. But once the complexity of the atom increases, he does not have an answer. All of these don't apply to an atom like oxygen or fluorine or carbon or any other things. Another thing is it fails to account for the finer details of hydrogen atom. तो यहाँ पे like basic
Miss
spectroscopy
Valkar,
देखा है. Yeah.
I mean, what science we know of, why can't everything be proved easily? Why does it have to be so complex?
That's I honestly have no answer to that. The reason is that, like the universe is weird, like things are weird. There's a lot of things
Yeah.
that, people we've not even been able to get answers for. The best example is dark matter. Putting in all the calculations and everything. People have failed to account for like 95% of the universe's mass, which is what is basically dark matter. It's not like evil matter or anything. It's just that, it's hidden from us. Like we know it exists, but we don't know what form it takes or where is it or how to detect it or anything else. That's basically it. Like a lot of things that are unexplained. Mm. Oh yeah, but coming back to Bohr's time, he was able to explain this for hydrogen atoms, but he could not explain for other more complicated atoms. Second is, yeah, he could not explain the ability of atoms to form molecules by chemical bonds. The quantum mechanical model definitely does explain. So once we learn about SPDF orbitals and all, like that also directly ties into how the covalent bonds are formed. So all of it fits in. But Bohr was not able to do it because right now he only said that, oh, they exist in different orbitals. But how are those orbitals interacting when they form bonds? There was no answer to that. Then there's two specific effects called Zeeman effect and Stark effect. So what happens is when you have the line spectrum and when you apply a magnetic field to it, like you have the getting the emission spectrum ka whole setup, you got the emission spectrum also, but when you apply a magnetic field to the sample, it is observed that those particular lines split into a doublet. Okay, two particular lines. So that is called Zeeman effect. And similarly, when an electric field is applied, again, like they split into two lines. So that particular effect is called Stark effect. So Bohr was not able to explain like why are they splitting and why is like a magnetic field and electric field, how is it interacting with the atom or the transition itself? Like he had no answers to that. So these are the three main limitations of Bohr's model. One is the finer details, which also ties into Zeeman effect and Stark effect. He could not explain why that was happening. Two is that he could not explain the structure of more complicated atoms, if it has more than one electron. And the third is he could not explain the formation of molecules, the chemical bonds. Okay, cool. Oh yeah, Ishita has mentioned neutrinos. Neutrinos are other things that it took hell lot of time to figure out what they are and all of that.
Neutrinos are the ones which are released or something during beta decay, or the anti-neutrinos or something like that.
Yeah, they are one of the quantum particles that do exist. But it was really, really hard to detect them. Like theoretically, people knew that, oh, there was some particle with zero charge, zero mass, but they had like some amount of energy, which are basically neutrinos. But practically, they could not like explain it. Yeah. Ishita is clarifying, Dhriti, that anti-neutrinos are released during beta decay.
Released during beta decay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Ishita.
Huh. Okay. All right. Take about 4-5 like or like 2-3 minutes of a break. In the meantime, I am just going to get the workbook and we'll do a few numericals. Okay.
Just 25 minutes left. Might as well we'll wait in front of the screen and we just get the work.
Sorry, yeah, can you repeat that?
We just have 25 minutes left, so might as well get the workbook on and we'll do it. Don't give us a break.
Ah, yeah, I'm just like opening the workbook. My hard disk had crashed the last couple of days, which is why things are taking a bit of a time getting this. Okay. Now, Ishita says, I subscribe. So you guys like just stare away from the screen for a minute. Like just rest your eyes for a bit. Let me load this up in the meantime. Okay.
Whenever I open the workbook, I find it very overwhelming.
Yeah. Oh, because of the sheer number of questions.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean,
We've
even in
covered a
a
lot of
school,
them. Like,
yeah, I know we've covered a lot of them, but it's still, oh my God, so many questions. Oh, one
and you'll
chapter,
find a
how
lot
can
of.
you have so many questions? One question, I mean, one chapter, you can't have so many questions. It's
You
just a mental.
can. Hmm. Quantum mechanical. Yeah, here we have it. So these all we had done last time and continuing. There you go. Look at question number 58. So we'll just quickly discuss the questions, and again, like last time, I'll give you guys problems to do it, and you can do it over the weekend. Like take 2-3 days, spend like once you get an hour's time together, then you can sit and do all of them. And yeah, after that we'll check. So 58, calculate the frequency, energy, and wavelength of radiation corresponding to spectral line of lowest frequency in Lyman series in the spectra of hydrogen atom. Okay. Also calculate this thing, also calculate this thing. Okay. All right. Let's leave the next two parts. Let's leave the calculate the energy for corresponding line of Li2 plus part and focus only on the first part. So you need to calculate frequency, energy, and wavelength, Kiska, of radiation corresponding to the spectral line of lowest frequency in Lyman series. So Lyman series में what all set of lines correspond to Lyman series line spectrum में?
Ultraviolet spectrum region.
Can you repeat that, Dhriti? Your voice was breaking a little there.
Ultraviolet.
It falls in the ultraviolet region, but when you look at the transitions, so n value is it falling to n equal to 1, falling to n equal to 2? वैसे which, so what can you say about the transition
N
for
equal to 1.
हाँ
N
n equal to 1, right?
will be 1. N equal to 1.
Yeah. तो Lyman series में lowest frequency किसका होगा? 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 5 to 1. Like if you compare all of them, which one will have like the smallest amount of, the frequency, which means that which one will have the smallest energy difference?
2 to 1, I guess.
Absolutely. Awesome, Mayas. Yeah. So 2 to 1. So that is what they are basically asking you to find. So n equal to 2 say n equal to 1, if that is the transition happening, so energy is released. So that energy released ka, like you need to find the value of the energy released, the frequency and the wavelength. So there you can directly apply the formula E equal to
Wavelength we
RH
can
into
find.
wavelength. You can
Wavelength we
find
can find
energy also.
by
You
the
can
formula. And
or
the
energy
energy
also you
that
can find. No, अभी आसान हो
this
गया.
formula that minus 2.181 na?
Yeah.
Okay.
And अगर इसमें से तीनों में से even if you get one quantity, you can get the other two easily. Like you've got E equal to hc by lambda or h nu, and C equal to lambda into nu or f lambda. Okay. Now also calculate the energy for corresponding line in the spectra of Li2 plus. So H atom के लिए direct है, but if you were to calculate the same thing for Li2 plus, then how is the formula going to change?
Divided by Z, that is the N2 plus the atomic number.
So divided by Z is for the radius. For energy, you multiply by Z square. Hang on, let me just show it. Yellow. Notice down. So energy ka value is multiplied by Z square, or radius is the one that gets divided by Z. So En is equal to minus 2.18 into 10 power minus 18 into 1 by n square is the original for hydrogen atom. So Z square by n square is the modified for hydrogen-like atoms. Yeah. So in this case, since you're dealing with energy, you will have to multiply by Z square. Cool. Can I switch?
Yes, ma'am. So here we will multiply by 9 because we have lithium. And
Yes. Yes. Awesome. Okay. So you're given the answers also here. Nice. Okay. 63 is like these are the problems that I'd given for homework. So I just put it all in this thing only. Mm, if number ये भी direct है. There you go. Look at number 82. Show that ground state of electrons in hydrogen atom is equal to the first excited state energy of electron in He plus ion, assuming that their Rydberg constants are equal. Okay. Easy, difficult? What do you guys think?
Calculate the energy of the hydrogen electrons, and then we calculate the energy of the helium electrons. The values.
Yeah. So in this case, you've got the first excited state. So first excited state मतलब कौन से energy level में है electron?
Second.
हाँ. In this case, you get n equal to 2 or He plus ion है, तो Z also will be modified, so you can just calculate it. Another tip, you guys, like whenever you have questions like this, right, where you're not asked for the numerical value, in this case, it's just comparison between both the energy levels. You don't have to calculate the final numerical value. So it also mentions assuming that their Rydberg constants are equal, right? So find out the energy of hydrogen in terms of Rydberg constant. Like you might get minus RH or minus 4 RH or minus 5 by 7 RH or whatever. And find out the other energy like He plus ka first excited state also in terms of RH only, and then compare both of them. That'll make it so much easier for you. You'll save a lot of time in the calculation part of it by not calculating. Okay.
I did not
Then
get it. The last thing that you explained, like how could we do it easily?
I'll just show it how to do it. Yeah, this one problem. Okay, so energy of hydrogen in ground state का formula क्या है?
Minus 2.18 into 10 power 8 on our Rydberg constant into 1 by
हाँ,
n square.
minus RH into 1 by n square ना. Now because it is in ground state, n का value क्या हो जाएगा?
N will be 1.
So write this as
So the
minus
it will
RH.
be yeah.
So that's what I'm saying.
Leave it as minus RH.
Yes. Now since you have to compare both of them, and they said take RH to be same for both of them, don't change it, because when you compare, अगर दोनों RH के terms में आ गया तो it'll be easy for comparison. ठीक है, अभी हाइड्रोजन का आ गया RH में. Now energy of He plus in first excited state will be again minus RH into Z square by n square. So again RH ही आया ना, so I'm not going to change that. Into Z square क्या होगा इसमें?
4.
4.
No, 2.
क्योंकि हीलियम है.
Yeah, the answer will be 4.
हाँ, 2 square upon first excited
2
state.
square, because first excited state will be the second.
Yeah.
इसके बाद
So ground state, yes. N equal to 1 is ground. Then n equal to 2 is the first one after that. So यहाँ भी 2 square है. So 2 square gets cancelled. Then इधर भी you've got minus RH only. So this is what they are asking to show. Like you can compare इधर भी minus RH आया, इधर भी minus RH आया. So therefore, energy of H in ground state is equal to energy of helium plus ion in first excited state. So whenever you have compare these two energies, and if the expression has RH या Planck's constant or value of light, like any common constants that you have, do not cancel them out. Like don't yeah, don't calculate them because that's going to waste your time. Yeah, say simple आ गया, like the value of RH is constant, so it's going to be equal in both cases. Yeah. So Mayas, yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, don't calculate it. Leave it in terms of the constants so that it gets easier. So even when you have to find ratios, right? अगर दोनों का ratio find out करना है तो RH cancel हो जाएगा numerator denominator में. Things like that. Okay. Um, all of these we have already read. ये तो photoelectric effect का है. हाँ, there you go. What is the energy in joules? Look at question number 89. What is the energy in joules required to shift electrons of the hydrogen from first Bohr orbit to fifth Bohr orbit? And what is the wavelength of the light emitted when electrons returns to the ground state? I think I'd given this in the set of homework questions last time. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's very
I got
direct. Yeah. So now you must be able to solve it, na? Like now that we have done Bohr's model.
I can try.
See, first Bohr orbit मतलब n का value क्या होगा? Sid? First Bohr orbit में n का value क्या होगा? What is the value of n? Sid, नहीं. So this is not the first excited state. This is the first Bohr orbit itself. मतलब basically first orbit itself.
So 1, the value is 1.
मतलब first energy level. And then fifth Bohr orbit मतलब yeah, fifth energy level. Yeah. So the reason it's called Bohr orbit is because इसके बाद quantum mechanical model भी propose हुआ ना. So this basically indicates that you have to apply the postulates or expressions given by Bohr. So Bohr orbit relates to the energy level or stationary states that he had named. Yeah. Okay. So once you get n1 n2 का values, it's pretty easy to apply the formula उसके बाद. Yeah, that's it. So these are the basic kinds of questions you'll be asked. Like सारे transitions के ऊपर ही है. And maximum change, like then radius ka one type of questions are there. Again, as the question we had come across, तो He2 plus का क्या होगा या sorry He plus का क्या होगा या फिर Li2 plus का क्या होगा. It's basically those kinds of questions only. Okay. ठीक है. So it makes perfect sense to practice line spectra and this concepts together. Like as you can see, there are questions that relate both of them, and line spectra type questions भी आसान हो जाएगा now that you've got the direct energy का ही values. So complete those problems, and इससे related I'll give you, like, there won't be a lot. I'll give you maybe 5-6 more of them, so it won't take a lot of your time. And yeah, so practice. Next class we'll finish off this particular chapter. There's only the quantum mechanical model left, and since you guys have done it in school, this will be more like a revision. So फटाफट we'll get it done. Okay. ठीक है. Cool. Any doubts? Anything else?
Not now. When we solve questions, I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of doubts.
ठीक है. Yeah. So yeah, take some time out and solve last week's questions also and this week's questions also, and then we'll meet next time. Okay.
Bye, Miss. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Chalo. Bye. ठीक है. I'm ending the session.